The 32nd National Real Estate Convention NREC 2025 emphasized the importance of staying ahead of emerging trends to drive growth and overcome challenges in Malaysia's real estate industry. With the theme Fostering Innovation for a Sustainable Future, Breaks, Blueprints and Beyond, the convention gathered industry's leaders, policymakers and academicians to explore transformative trends. Key highlights included the welcome address by RIM's President Ahmad Sanusi Sheikh Hop, who highlighted the need for innovations, resilience and visionary thinking in the real estate sector. Kuala Lumpur Mayor Datuk Sri Maimunah Muhammad Sharif emphasised building a smart, sustainable and resilient Kuala Lumpur. The event underscored the need for sustainable development, policy innovation and strategic investments to ensure the real estate sector's growth and resilience. And for that discussion, I welcome you our guest, Tiba Lakshmi Kunasekaran at the Research Associate Khazanah Research Institute. I want to say thank you very much, Tiba, for joining me. Firstly, Asia-Pacific investment in Malaysia real estate have reached $9.5 billion. But can urban renewal efforts like the URA transform the short-term capital into long-term commitment to local communities and infrastructure?
Okay, thank you, Nina, for the opportunity. I think URA might help, but it needs to be done right for it to turn the short-term investment into long-term value for communities, right? So this means redevelopment shouldn't just be about profit. It needs to protect existing residents and actually benefit the communities living there. So I think the questions that we need to ask are like, what kind of developments are we going to bring in? For example, if low-cost flats are being demolished and replaced with medium-end apartments, or will they still be affordable over time, especially when it comes to maintenance, right? So poor workmanship and upkeep are actually the part of the reasons why these buildings needed renewal in the first place. So we need to make sure that we shouldn't be repeating that cycle. So other questions also like, are we going to keep the original communities or push them out? Are we going to involve them in the planning? And are we going to plan for what happens after redevelopment, like ensuring there is enough infrastructure to support more mobility, because we're going to expect high density coming in from the redevelopment, right? So if URA is going to create a long-term value, it needs to be backed by a strong regulation and genuine early-stage community involvement.
Tiba, redeveloping aging in underutilized areas is a key national agenda, but are our current urban policies and planning frameworks evolving fast enough to ensure these transformations benefit communities and not just the developers?
Yes, redeveloping aging and underutilized areas are important, right? Because it is needed to generate the local economic development. But the current proposal for URA seems to be favoring the developers more than the communities. So right now, the proposal is to lower the consent threshold to 75 to 80%, so that the projects that needs to be redeveloped can be redeveloped, because with the existing threshold of 100%, it hinders potential redevelopment, they say. But this also means that voices of remaining 20 to 25% will not be heard. And with a lower consent threshold, then there is a risk of overdevelopment, more developments coming in for profit, sidelining community needs. So that is risky, right? Because we could end up displacing communities just to make room for higher return development. So more needs to be done in safeguarding the residents' interests. If they consent with redevelopment, they agree means, then better protection needs to be given, adequate compensation, better relocation options, because redevelopments, if their buildings are going to be redeveloped, they will be relocated and have to stay away for like many years. So we need to make sure that they are not staying far away that will disrupt their daily routines. And then we need inclusive planning processes. Stronger roles need to be played by mayors and local councils involved in identifying the right areas and projects, and guarantee that housing that is affordable for them. So yes, in some cases, residents will be getting a free one-to-one unit, right? But would they be able to maintain them in the long term? So if not, then redevelopment actually risks benefiting mainly the developers and leaving the vulnerable groups behind.
All right, redeveloping is only worth it, as you mentioned, if we can maintain the sustainability for a long term. And definitely that is the main focus that we should take a look at. And the URA is seen as a catalyst to revive neglected neighborhoods. But how do we prevent the risks of forced evictions, property speculations, and gentrifications that could displace long-time residents?
Okay, so these are the very right emerging concerns that we need to be to address, right? If we are going ahead with URA, we have seen in the past redevelopment projects how things can go wrong, like forced eviction. Owners that opposed the project or disagreed, they had to move out to different places. The rising property prices and gentrification that ends up pushing long-time residents out. Like we take Baksar South, for example, right? After redevelopment, property values, the surrounding property values surged, and businesses shifted to cater for more affluent crowd. So changing the character of the city and also increasing the cost of living in that area. So first and foremost, what we need to conduct a needs-based analysis. We need to analyze whether redevelopment in that area is actually necessary or a proper maintenance upgrade will be sufficient. So we need to see whether we can just start with the maintenance process first before going into redevelopment. So it's important that any redevelopment is based on a thorough needs-based analysis and that the voices of residents, especially property owners, are heard and respected. So for property speculation, to avoid speculation, especially if affordable housing projects are included as part of the redevelopment plan, we don't want speculators to take advantage. So we might need stronger measures, like perhaps we can introduce moratoriums to stop people from flipping units just for profit. So ideally, right, we want urban renewal to improve lives and not displace communities.
And Tiba, we're also Malaysia heading to aging nation. We need investors-friendly urban renewal, but also one that's fair and inclusive. What concrete changes must we make to our land laws, approval processes, and planning system to ensure equitable outcomes for all stakeholders?
Okay, in my opinion, right, I think what we really need is the community-friendly urban renewal. So one that put people at the center rather than prioritizing property value gains. So urban renewal should start with a human-centered approach, focusing on what residents truly need. That means looking at whether existing buildings can be maintained and extended in life instead of jumping straight into demolition. And if and only maintenance is truly no longer viable, not cost effective, then redevelopment can be considered, but only after a thorough needs analysis. And then approval systems need to ensure that this analysis has been done properly, check if there's an actual local demand, assess the developer's track record, and make sure plans include supporting infrastructures like roads, schools, and public transport, especially since we're going to expect higher population density, right? So this will bring issues like traffic congestions. And we also need to be cautioned of longer waiting times for residents for redevelopment to complete. So we have seen in past projects like Residency Kerinci or Razak Mansions, this resident actually waited for many years, like 5 to 6 years, for not knowing when they will be able to return to their homes. And that creates a very deep sense of insecurity, right? And we also need to make sure that the plans are actually planned comprehensively, like taking into consideration that the risk that might come that will cause the projects to be stalled or what. So the processes need to be carefully planned and phased, in my opinion. Yeah.